Welcome to the DTC Insider Podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisenthal.
Real quick before we continue with the episode, let me tell you something. If you own or work for a DTC brand and you're not hitting your revenue and profitability goals, you're not alone. Things are getting harder, and what used to work doesn't anymore. That's why it's important to find a business-oriented partner that's focused on improving the levers that will change the game for your business. And believe me, it is possible. At BSR Digital, to give you an example, we have recently helped our clients generate between, listen well, 80 and 700K in extra monthly revenue. If you'd like to explore how we could do the same for you and your business, head on over to bsrdigital.com and book a call with us. Hey, welcome to another episode. I'm Brian Roisenthal, your host, and today it's my pleasure to tell you that I'm going to interview Kyle Bergman. He's the founder and chief Swoveralls officer, that's a new one, at Swoveralls, a brand that combined two of the most common apparel concepts, sweatpants and overalls. Hey, Kyle, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So I know entrepreneurship is hard and it's definitely not a straight line, right? So I wanted you to know if you want, of course, to tell the audience more about you and what happened to your business in the last few years.
Sure, happy to share everything. I don't know if it's one of my better attributes or if it's an area that I need to develop, but I am a really open door when it comes to talking about the wins and the learnings that I've had over the course of Swoveralls and just in business in general. Specifically, in the last few years, I have had a business divorce of sorts. In 2021, I was lucky enough to partner with a small private equity firm that was actually born out of the pandemic. Now, there are a lot of these out in the world, small funds that are focused on acquiring businesses that are distressed to some degree. They've raised money and they can't raise any more capital. The founders have a dispute. There's maybe a roof on the brand's ability to grow. They need more help. And Swoveralls at the time was in a unique position where I wasn't particularly feeling distressed, but it was a really interesting deal with professionals who had owner operator experience like me. It wasn't a traditional private equity fund where it was a bunch of MBA grads who had done their time at investment banking firms and then were looking to just flip a company based on some spreadsheet jockeying. So I was really vibing with the vision they had for the brand. And we signed a 10-year agreement that basically said they're going to let me do what I want within the business for a percentage of the company. And that's what we did. About 2 years into our partnership, based on external forces in the market, based on the performance of other brands that they had in their portfolio, they decided to divest from Swoveralls. It was a really unique opportunity because I was able to retain 100% ownership. But with them leaving, I also lost the team. I also lost the checkbook to fund marketing and inventory. And so at the beginning of 2023, I was back in the CEO founder seat and was looking at the entire thing really from a half glass full standpoint. I was very fortunate to speak to a number of entrepreneurs, founders that I respected during that process. And they said, Kyle, all things said at the end of the day, you're getting 100% of your company back. You have customers, you have a product market fit. This is a great opportunity. And so I ran with it. 2023 ended up being our best year yet. Somehow Swoveralls just turned 7 actually this past month, and we've grown year over year from selling our first pair in July of 2017.
Thanks. So I'm happy for, the last part of it. And I think I'm a true believer that things happen for a reason and we don't know what's waiting for us around the corner, and even if in the moment we feel down because it looks like, you know, this is not the right thing for the company or for you, then when we stop and analyze things, then we know that's for the best. So in this case, you, the company turned 7 years old. So it started in 2017. Then this happened in 2022. How many people did you have in your team back then?
So prior to the partnership with this fund, the team was me, an intern, and a paid media buyer. And what was I doing from a customer service standpoint? I don't remember when the when I partnered with the fund, there were 10 people working on it. These people were also working on other brands within the portfolio. And then I was lucky enough when we decided to part ways that the customer service agent that was working on Swoveralls, I brought her with me. And so the day after all of the dust settled, it was the two of us. And over the course of the last 2 years, I've really invested in people and placed some bets that haven't panned out, to be honest. And at our peak, we were around 12 people, all part-time contractors. And now we're back down to 4. And actually, here I go being ultra transparent. I had to have conversations this past week with 3 folks that I said, based on our performance lately, we need to pause our working relationship. It's not due to the performance of them specifically. I guess it is kind of in a way, but really it's larger cash flow issues. And if I were to point, it would be easy for me to point fingers at the meta gods and the TikTok gods and the cost of goods and the increase in freight costs, but just rising costs have forced me to reduce payroll. I'm in a unique position. Maybe a lot of founders, I hope a lot of founders also have this skill set where I can do almost virtually anything in the company. And times like these, I have to get my hands dirty. But I really, when things were going really well, instead of putting more money in my pocket, I don't pay myself from the brand. And we could talk more about how I do pay myself, but I wanted to invest in people. I wanted to see this thing grow. I was more top line focused in a world where it has to be about bottom line now. So that was, yeah. Earlier this week, I was actually talking with someone about, it's easy for me to feel disappointed or upset that I made the wrong decision. But I think if I could go back, I would do the same thing again, maybe with some tweaks. But when you find the right people in the right chair, I've also seen it happen. I've been on the sidelines of some companies where they just see explosive growth when you have people in the right position.
So,
The last thing
that
I'll
you,
say,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
the last thing I'll say on this topic is, and this might not be a popular opinion, but I think early stage companies and founders are looking for people that almost don't really exist, in the sense that you want an entrepreneur to the extent that they have incredible initiative and drive, but they stay within the guardrails that you put up. the perfect small business employee doesn't exist, because that's a person who's going to go and start their own thing.
Agree. Of course, there are a lot of people who are scrappy and who will go and probably will move the earth for you in the company, but you know, probably we should partner up with entrepreneurs and hire employees. And I'm not saying employees and entrepreneurs to mean bad or good. Being an employee is as good as being an entrepreneur. You have to be crazy to be an entrepreneur. Probably we are all crazy at some point. We want to pursue our dreams, and it's more challenging than we expected. And definitely something you said, it's a conversation I'm having left and right with many people in the pod and outside the pod as well, which is profitability, bottom line, however we want to call it. It's, you know, it's a tough one these days, but without that, you know, we cannot build a team, we cannot build a company, we cannot do anything. So you kind of have both perspectives. You are a brand founder, and I didn't mention this in the intro, I think, but you're also an agency owner. So you get to have both perspectives. So, what do you see from the perspective of the brand, and then what do you see that brands need? Because we know by now that brands hate agencies, regardless of their performance. It's like a headline for a newspaper, and it's true. Brands hate agencies. We deserve it. I don't know what we did, but we deserve it. So, what do you see from both ends?
The laughing, brands hate agencies, and that, I am one of those brand owners that has had a lot of frustration with agencies. And it was last year, the paid media buyer that I mentioned prior to the private equity fund partnership, my friend and business partner Jackson, last year, I said, I am tired of working with agencies that don't understand the nuance and challenges that go into running a business. They're only concerned about impressions and return on ad spend. There are more and more agencies that are either building their own in-house brands, or brand owners that are developing an agency arm to what they do, to provide that level of understanding. And so, what me and Jackson decided to do was take a page out of the private equity fund's playbook and create a shared services model where we would essentially outsource the Swoveralls marketing team to other direct to consumer brands that were looking for guidance from a paid media, content creation, and brand positioning standpoint from another brand versus an agency. It provides a level of credibility that is difficult for agency owners that don't have D2C experience, and that's what we provide. I'll tell you though, when I put my agency hat on, it makes me question continue to running a D2C brand, because the agency is very profitable. It's technically a service business. Yes, we're trading our time for money, but not having to deal with the meta platform, not having to deal with physical goods, inventory, suppliers overseas, uh, having a handful of clients versus tens of thousands of clients. It's a different animal. I like doing both because it provides a unique perspective when I'm working on the other one. But lately, I've been admiring more service-based businesses where there isn't as much tangible complexity with physical things that you're selling.
So, I guess, of course, we as human beings, regardless of, you know, each person, like we as human beings, I think that we prefer what's easier than what's harder. So of course, I for example, from the agency perspective, I envy, in a healthy way, but I envy brand founders. I love I would love one day to create something people love that they buy, and it acts as a compound effect. Like, of course, in a successful scenario, which is pretty hard to achieve, but it, I would love that one day. But on what you were saying about agencies, I think we are all frustrated with many services in life in general. And talking about agencies, performance marketing agencies, I think it's unfair what happens to them. And I have one, so I can speak to that from my perspective at least. If it, I, I, I have a degree in computer science. I have a development background, so I used to have before this agency, which I created in 2013. I used to have a software development, let's say, company, and in those type of companies, let's say website development, app development, you have a clear deliverable. So your deliverable is the website, the app, right? When you are a growth marketing agency, there's no deliverable. You need to achieve goals. It's not that we are hired to provide deliverables, like create one campaign, I will pay you, create two campaigns. No, of course they want us to create the campaigns or whatever we do, email, ads, whatever. But we need to achieve results, right? And those results, the problem is many times, let's say for the sake for the sake of the example that it's a good agency. The agency is doing a good job. Success depends on so many factors, right? We wish it was as easy to create a good ad and that will boost the entire company performance, right? So it's way more of a done with you than it is with the software development companies, right? And it's at that point that I understand the frustration of brands, but at the same time, I feel for us, let's say agencies, because it's not that they are wrong. There are many agencies that don't do their job well enough. Again, as it happens with many other industries, but even those that do their job very well, they don't have all the tools in their toolbox to make the difference for the brand. What do you think about that?
It resonates with me a lot. We have on the agency side kissed a couple frogs, as they say, as far as taking on clients that weren't the perfect fit, um, because we thought that we could fit a square peg into a round hole. We saw an opportunity with the story they were telling, a visionary founder that didn't have the budget to invest in content. And when you are running ads with less than stellar content, it doesn't matter how well you know the algorithm. If it's not catching a potential customer's attention, then you're kind of up the creek. Conversely, we have worked with clients who have come to us with excellent content, but with our expertise and know-how, we're able to take that and provide them with a compounded return on investment and on ad spend, because the previous agency that they were working with maybe wasn't using the right audience testing or what have you. And we don't do content creation in-house for anyone else other than Swoveralls, and that's just because it's a bandwidth thing. But we work very closely with another agency that focuses just on content creation. Uh, and so, yeah, to your point, I like to kind of speak in metaphors. If agencies are all about, promising that we're going to make a meal, and maybe the only thing that we're able to provide for the meal is the tools used for it. Well, we don't have a lot of control on the ingredients. We don't have a lot of control on necessarily the people that are coming into the restaurant to see it. We can to a degree, but when you're only a small part of the puzzle, it it really isn't setting people up for success. Versus, to use your previous experience with building an app, maybe you're not just providing the tools, but actually you're creating the entire dining experience. And so you have more control there.
Love that metaphor. I'm I'm all about metaphors. My wife wants to kill me for that, but I still do it. So I will save that one for later. Yeah, I love it. So I agree. Changing subjects for a sec and talking about the growth that you achieved in the last year. 50% growth year over year. Is that correct? What
Yeah,
was
we now it's closer to 30%, but when we were first chatting a couple months ago, it was at 50%, which I guess said differently as we've had a 20% decline over the last 90 days. And I can talk about why. But yes, we have grown. 2024, as of this recording, is still better than 2023.
okay? Yeah, 30% growth is still great in this
Yeah.
context. So could you please tell us both situations? What contributed mainly, to the growth and to the decline, if you want to call it that way, in the last few months?
The growth, the growth in Q1 was due to having some excellent new styles that we launched. Swoveralls, for those listening, and as Brian mentioned, the glorious combination of sweatpants and overalls into a quirky, unique, and very comfortable apparel concept. And we've tested making some new products over the years, but after doing a ton of customer discovery research, we found that people buy their first pair of Swoveralls because they're unique and they're comfortable. But we have over 2,000 people that have bought 3 or more pairs. And when I speak to those folks, they're buying the third, the fourth, the fifth pair because of this limited edition color or design that we launched. And so I made the decision uh, pretty much around the time that I took back over the company in 2023 that we're going to focus on depth within the Swoveralls silhouette. Maybe in a few years, if we continue to grow, we'll launch more products. But there's an opportunity to tell a collection story here. So in that as the preface, in January we launched a limited edition dinosaur print that did really, really well. And then we also in February had some excess inventory and discontinued styles, and we did a buy a pair of Swoveralls, get a mystery pair free, which was a clever way where people could select the size, but we're going to send you something that we don't offer anymore and help us move through some broken SKUs. In addition to this, we were spending aggressively on Meta, TikTok, Google. Our lifetime value is about $150. Um, the average order value is around 114. And so I placed this bet that let's spend a lot to acquire customers and we'll get them to come back. And it has kind of happened to an extent. We're still up 30%. I think it's working. What I didn't calculate for is the additional cash outflow expenses that we would have to stay on top of inventory and continue to fund marketing. And I think that in hindsight, what we did wasn't wrong if we had the right cash balance in the bank to support like an 18-month run of that strategy. What I was, we were a bootstrapped brand. And what I was doing was more of a venture backed strategy. And so the decline that we've seen recently was due to us having to pull back significantly on spend, which as a result, we saw a decrease in traffic to our website, a decrease in sales. Conversion rate went up because we're not getting as many unqualified leads to our site. But that we've had to almost like June was one of our lowest sales months in 3 years because I just wanted to do a test and say, let's see what happens when we turn off everything. Can we still make any money? Luckily, we did from a revenue standpoint. So there's still product market fit, but it was really discouraging to see how much of an impact digital marketing has on our business. And when you have fixed costs, kind of going back to the team that I had around 12, we operating at a loss. And so now it's like trying to find that balance of where can we be efficient and continue to grow?
Few things. The first one, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understood you correctly, initially you scaled through the offer by changing the offer, introducing new products and offering something different, right?
Correct.
So, so that's something cool that not many brands consider when talking about scale. All they think about is how do we scale ads? While that's a valid, scaling through introducing new products, it's good. And then what happened, of course, is that what you said about not calculating the impact on inventory, etc. Is are are you how many orders do you need to be profitable typically? Are you profitable in the first one, second, third?
From a unit economic standpoint, we are profitable on the first order with a customer. Um, if we take into account fixed expenses to run the business, and we're taking into account ad spend, I mean, well, our break even ROAS is around 1.8. I mean, our contribution margin, and this is a key performance indicator that I wish that I had found out about a lot earlier, before I started. Now it's something that I think is part of the value of us working with brands that are maybe just focused on ROAS, and we show them kind of a bigger picture. Um, but to kind of not to go off on a tangent there, yes, we are profitable from the first purchase.
Then from a different perspective, if I got it right, you are not, and that's why you had issues with the scale later on. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So are we profitable from the first purchase? If we look at like, and so we sell Swoveralls for about $108 to get them landed in the US. It's about $28, which includes fabric, cut and sew, customs duties, freight. In Q4 and Q1 of this past year, we were air freighting a lot of things from China, which we were doing because we had this kind of false sense of urgency and wanting to get the products to the customer as soon as possible. That was costing us $5 a unit. If we put it on a boat, it takes 30 days, but that's about $1.40 a unit. So the cost, and then what else? We also shipping to the customer is about $11 from our 3PL, and then we want to also factor in returns. Our return rate is actually very low for an apparel company. It's 6%. And of that 6%, half of the returns are actually size exchanges. I feel a certain way about size exchanges because if you're exchanging, yes, you still love the product and you want to stay with us, which is great. But then that means that we actually have to ship to you 3 times, which stings on the bottom line. So all in, our cost to deliver our goods is around 57, let's call it $60. And so that leaves us around $40 to $45 to acquire the customer. And if we're able to acquire the customer for around $30, then our contribution margin is pretty healthy, around 20%. That's a scalable business. When you talk about profitable on the bottom line, that's where the math, it's interesting to look at because we say, okay, we have to sell 800 units a month and we have to spend this much on ads in order to sell 800 units a month. And then the $1 million question always comes, can we get there at this cost per acquisition or cost to acquire a customer or ROAS, whatever metric you want to use, they all lead to the same answer. And that's where we've gotten in trouble balancing all of that. And it's honestly, I think I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, or I wouldn't even be able to say anything with a straight face or have any confidence in what I do if I wasn't able to be this transparent about the challenges that we have on the Swoverall side of things. Very, very transparent with the brands that we work with as well. Like, and part of me selling the agency is I show them the back end of Shopify. I show them the back end of Triple Whale. Like, these are the performance metrics for us. It's really hard. I'm not some shaman that understands how to do anything. And anyone who tells you that they are, that's a huge red flag. So um, one, I guess you said everything happens for a reason. And when you get punched in the gut, which happens more often than anyone would like to admit when you're running your own company, um, sometimes it makes sense to throw in the towel and turn the page and start something new. But even if you don't do that yet, getting back up and reacting in a positive way is going to be a really valuable learning experience. And something that I did last month that I probably should have done earlier, but I went to China and I had tea and I shook the hands of our factory partners. And the reason why I went was because with rising costs on the digital marketing side, the other big lever that brands can pull, in theory, if you could wave a magic wand, is your cost to make your product. And so I went there telling them that we have a customer acquisition cost. It costs around $45, $50 to convince someone on Facebook or TikTok or Google to buy a pair of $100 Swoveralls. But what if we could sell Swoveralls for $79 or for $60? It almost becomes an impulse buy. It almost becomes something that people are going to treat themselves to versus something that people have to thoughtfully save up for. And as a result, the cost to acquire them goes down as well. However, we also need the cost to make the product to go down. And I paint this picture to our suppliers and they come back and say, here's what we could potentially do. The crazy thing, and this is where life gets funny in ways we can't predict, in preparing for the trip to China, I spoke to some people in my network and was introduced to some other suppliers that could make Swoveralls at an even better cost savings. And so the story is still being written, but what might happen is that we find better cost savings, not by me actually going to China, but in my preparation to go to China, I find the answer and the door that I'm looking for.
think it was, I don't know if it was a swimmer or someone at the Olympians, the other day from the US team. He lost or he didn't win the gold medal, if you want to put it that way. He said something similar. It's not about the end goal, it's about the preparation, it's about the process. So in this case, the trip to China might have helped you with the trip itself, but prior to that, as you said, too. And that happens in many other areas of life. Even if you don't do something that you planned for years or month, that process already give you a lot of learnings. Not all of us know how to acknowledge that and how to learn from them. And I think something for you based on the little, I don't know you, right? I'm just meeting you now. But from everything that you said that you love, speaking transparently about your, challenges, the wins and everything in public, that helps you a lot. Because when we speak out loud about the hardest part, which is, our problems, our struggles, everything, the real deal that we are going through, I think that's when we actually learn, you know? So that's at least my take on what you said. I think it's pretty cool. And yeah, I was going to say something else, but I forgot. But yeah, I yeah, that's it about
Yeah,
that. I want to ask you about something else, but before doing that, I don't know if you have anything else to say about it.
I appreciate what you said, Brian. I The pleasure is in the suffering to a degree. There's a couple great books on the topic. One written by Dan Sullivan called The Gap and the Gain. And people that live in the gap are constantly looking forwards at where they want to go and what they haven't done yet. And it can cause a lot of anxiety. And I would be lying if I said that I wasn't someone that lives in the gap a lot. I am very hard on myself. I expect a lot from myself. I get envious. You said in a healthy way sometimes, and maybe sometimes in a healthy way, sometimes not. I try to practice also living in the game, and that's looking back at how far we've come and how much we've learned. And I think Kyle in 2017, if I had said in 7 years, if Swoveralls had grown year over year, doing $2 million in 2023, would you be happy with that? And I think I would have been amazed and very proud of myself. But when you're in it, operating on yourself every day, and you see all these companies exit, get acquired, make a lot of money, you forget about what you've done. Um, I do Ironmans. I like when I say that I like to suffer, I'm not kidding. And it's it's a really great stress reliever for me, and it also makes me feel accomplished to do things hard, to be disciplined. And I think maybe a part of me, this is kind of occurring to me as I'm speaking right now, I'm looking for that deliverable that you spoke about that can be so ephemeral in agency life, and also when you are running an e-commerce brand or any brand, what you're always chasing goals, and you get to the top of a mountain and you wonder if you should have been climbing that mountain in the first place. With an Ironman, you kind of reap what you sow as far as the work that you put in the swim, biking, running, and that gives me counterintuitively so much energy. Although I completely destroy my body physically, it makes me realize that I can do hard things and can persevere. So that's a little bit about the psychology of how I operate.
I think I'm in a triathlon team. I haven't run any Ironman, only a short and an Olympian or Olympic, whatever you call it in English. And
Mm-hmm.
I it's so tough. I cannot even imagine doing one, the entire one. So I want to say that that's because from my understanding is that happens to you because you have a win to celebrate, a clear win, a clear deadline, which is the Ironman finished. So you completed it, you feel amazing with yourself because you did it. Life is continuous, we don't have an end until we die. So, or until the business closes, let's say, for a business. So in that continuum, we need to, learn how to, which is super tough, how to set goals. And when we achieve them, to celebrate that. It's okay to find a bigger mountain, but it's okay to celebrate before doing that, you know? So there's no completing a brand unless you get acquired. And even then, you feel empty. It's like, you know, I don't have my baby anymore or whatever. So maybe you think that that feels great, but it actually doesn't feel great, even though they post about it and they say all those great things about it. They might feel empty inside, right? So, we never know. I think we all want what we don't have, right? So yeah. What I wanted to change subjects for a bit. You mentioned that you have a low, what do you say? Like um ah, not exchanges, the other one, returns. Yeah, returns. So what do you do to retain customers? Because I know you do a thing or two based on what I learned about you.
So to retain customers, and going back to the point you made around brands that want to grow and just donate more money to Meta or Google, uh, a great way to do that, to retain customers and to increase their lifetime value, is to create new products that they might be interested in. And we've done that, right? By having conversations, doing the hard work of speaking with customers, how did you find Swoveralls? The questions that I ask are, how did you first hear about us? Why did you purchase? What would make your Swoveralls experience an 11 out of 10? If a brand, all brands should be asking this in post-purchase survey as well. But you're going to get more long form responses when you have one-on-ones. And also, although it's not scalable, it's really cool that a few dozen people in the world have gotten off the phone with me and then have gone and spoken to like a family friend or and said, I just spoke to the founder of Swoveralls. For me, as a customer, the idea of speaking with the founder of a company who reached out to me because they wanted to learn more about my experience, that's retention on a minor scale. It's difficult to scale that because there's only so many hours in the day, but that's one thing. And I guess related to that, how do I have these conversations with these people? And we've set up automations through Klaviyo. We have two main automations. One, if you have purchased two or more products from us, you're going to get an email from me with a link to my Calendly saying, thank you so much for being one of our best customers ever. I would love to chat with you about your Swoveralls experience. If you visited our site 3 or more times in the last 90 days and have not purchased from us ever, you're going to get an email from me saying, I noticed you've been checking us out. I'd love to have a conversation with you and see what questions I could answer and see what your objections are potentially. Oftentimes it's around price, which kind of goes back to this hypothesis I have of lowering the price. What everyone these days is all about, how can we increase our price? And I want to go against the grain. That feels right for a number of reasons, not just for economic ones, but just going against the grain and making Swoveralls more accessible. I think it's more in line with our purpose of anyone that wants a pair of Swoveralls. We want to make sure that they can get a pair. And right now there is a little bit of a cost issue for people. Yeah, I think, what else from a retention standpoint?
Wanted to add something in the meantime. So that already is huge. The fact that a founder calls you is not scalable. So what? That I think it was the Jack Ma, Alibaba's founder, who said that to scale, we need to do things that don't scale, unscalable things before
Yeah.
we scale, because we need to learn from them. And by the way, I spoke with some, 8-figure, 9-figure brands, and all of them that I spoke with, they highlight in one way or the other ways they are in touch with their customers. Some of them, it's the founder or CEO calling VIP customers. Some of them send handwritten notes, one for the first time orders, the other for the second, and so on. Some of them even, and this is funny, at least when they told me about it, it was, they call their customers and they record themselves, while calling their customers. It's like a video of themselves, like the founder talking like this on speaker with the customer, and they record some fun conversations or funny conversations for the ads, and they work really well. The reasons why they chose buying from them, how many times, or why they bought this crazy number of products in a certain order. Then the other day I was discussing with the CEO at BattleBox, John Roman, and he was saying that they call customers who, something about what you said. The custom no, it was similar but different. It wasn't those who abandoned the cart or didn't buy in the last 90 days. It was like lapsed customers, customers who didn't buy in the last 120 days or something like that. They were customers, but still, it was a long time since the last time they bought, only because it makes sense for them, to as a business model, the repurchase, so it's not valid for every business model, but it makes sense that brands go the extra mile for the customers.
Yeah, I I love that. It's great to hear that brands like BattleBox are also doing it in a way Yeah, looking at lapsed customers is a smart way to do it. I love that idea of filming myself chatting with customers. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
it's cool. Ever since I learned about it, I started doing it myself in the agency, and everyone who comes on the show and I mentioned that it is like, I love the idea. Let me write it down, and it's so genius. And their ads were so funny. Like those ads were so funny and so good performing. And something I noticed about you, it doesn't have to do with retention, but with building rapport, maybe, which is kind of related sometimes. And it's that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw that on your website, you and your team or people you know are the face of the brand. Is that correct? Why
Yeah.
did you doing that?
Um, it's amazing what you have to do in an effort to be scrappy and bootstrap. I mean, I'm the cheapest model and definitely the ugliest model that we have, but I'm the cheapest one. So I'm happy to do it. And a lot of the people that you see on our site are actually customers. And we'll reach out to them and say, we'll send you a couple pairs of Swoveralls if you want to be on our site and if you want to model. And people are stoked to do it.
Wow. Yeah, that's an honor. I mean, if you love a brand, it's an honor to be on their website, you know? So that's amazing. Anything else you do to retain customers? Like I know you have, correct me if I'm wrong, you have a loyalty program, but kind of different, right? You don't do points.
Yeah, we thank you for reminding me about our loyalty program. We used to offer points, and we just thought that it wasn't as compelling as changing the copy a little bit. So instead of now getting points on every purchase, you get cash back in the form of store credit. And I think people understand that more in an easier to digest way than getting points. And so you get cash back. You can get store credit in a number of ways. In this way, we're not unique. Your birthday, you sign up for our emails, you sign up for our texts, you follow us on TikTok, you're going to get points for all that. You also get anywhere between 10 and 20% cash back on every purchase, which is incredibly generous relative to other brands that I know of and are the Revo, who is the loyalty app that we use. They tell us that we're a little too generous, but I'm banking on people coming back. And I think that's I've over the years over optimized for customer happiness. Um, and it's been when I try to be a better bottom line founder, it kind of I don't know. It's the brand loses a little bit of its soul. I haven't found that way. I think there's some brands that are really great at staying true to the customer, but also still making money. And for us, my dad likes to tease me and say that I'm really good at running a nonprofit because I want everyone to be happy with their experience. I want to use renewable materials. We use organic cotton, we use recycled polyester. That's why our landed costs are so high. Um, we're a member of 1% for the planet. We donate 1% of our top line revenue, not 1% of net proceeds, 1% of revenue to
Wow.
nonprofits helping the environment. So like over $45,000 since we joined in 2018. I've gone to Friends of Trees in Portland. I've gone to the Venture Out. I've gone to the River Project, which is helping the Hudson River in New York City. And so I think that retention also for us comes in the form of transparency too.
What's next for Swoveralls?
Well, we are double downing on our limited edition styles that we're coming out with. So later this year, we'll be launching a camouflage collection. We'll be bringing back our Teddy fleece. We'll be bringing back corduroy in a new color. And then we're going to be launching velour, which is basically velvet with a little bit of spandex in it. So it's stretchy velvet. Those will come in overalls, all in fun colors. And I'm supposed to start planning. Actually, I think tomorrow I have 4 hours blocked off to plan what we're going to start doing for spring summer. So we have a ton of feedback from our customers. They want us to do a collection around fruits on Swoveralls and dogs on Swoveralls and like kind of these fun prints. So the answer is more Swoveralls. And if anyone's listening to this and they have any good ideas, please feel free to DM us, or you could email me directly, Kyle@swoveralls.com. I'll get back to you.
You ask your customers what do they want, what ideas they. Or
yeah, I've done a couple months ago. I was doing I was doing 2 TikTok lives a week. I stopped doing that because I kind of got burned out, but it was amazing, the engagement that we were getting. And so I have a list of so many ideas. We could make one Swoverall new style per month for the next 5 years, with all of these ideas that we have.
That's amazing. Kyle, you've been great. But before you go, I wanted to ask you the last question. Do you have any book that you can think of to recommend to the audience? You mentioned the one already, the one, The Gap in the Game by Dan Sullivan. But I know you got one more based on previous conversations. I don't know if you want me to remind you or if you remember what I'm talking about, which one I'm talking about.
I wanna share one that I'm just about to finish, but then I want you to remind me about the one that I said when we spoke earlier, because I can't recall. I'm currently reading 2 books right now, but the one that I'm about to finish that has just found me at a really interesting time is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Have you read it, Ryan?
What's about?
It's a memoir of sorts from the actor Matthew McConaughey. I almost stopped. I'm listening to the audiobook. It's narrated by him. He's a really talented actor. He's actually I think he's a talented writer as well. He's just a creative, and his life has been remarkable. And the way that he looks at opportunity has been really refreshing. And for anyone that feels like they're going through a transition in their life or needs their brain chemistry altered a little bit, I recommend checking out Green Lights. And then the courage to be disliked is a book that I wish that I practiced more, because I just want everyone to like me, but there's a lot of power in just focusing on you, and that takes courage.
Exactly. Kyle, I had a great time. It was a very interesting episode. So before you go, where can people go to learn more about you and Swoveralls?
So anyone can go to swoveralls.com if they're interested in getting comfy and freeing their waistband. People can find me on LinkedIn, Kyle Bergman, or you can email me, Kyle@swoveralls.com. And thank you very much, Brian. It was great chatting with you.
Amazing. So for everyone who's listening to this or watching this, who is not there already, please head on over to the ddcinsider.com, click on the episode, and you will find all the notes with everything we discussed, as well as the links and books Kyle mentioned. Kyle, it was a pleasure again. Thank you for being here on the show.
Thank you.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.